Hello and welcome to the Engineer Your Success, Leadership, and Life Harmony Like a Mother show. I'm your host, Kenya Romanovska, award-winning investigative journalist turned maternity leave and working motherhood strategist, and I'm a mom of two delicious boys. They're 4 and 2 right now, and we're having a lot of fun preparing for the holiday season. And the reason for being here is we know that being a new mom or a working mom can be hard. It's a huge transformation. And you really need to understand those identity shifts to step into that season of your life with a lot of joy and power, not just sleep deprivation and feeling isolated. So we bring you the best guests and experts to reflect on your career trajectory, your new identity as a mother, and make sure that you can put all the pieces together to find that elusive, quote unquote, work-life balance. We like to use other terms, but we'll stick with that one for a while. And my guest today is Laura Berman Fortgang. She is known as a pioneer in the personal coaching field. She's a mom too. She's written 5 books in 15 languages, has a TEDx talk with 1.6 million views, and has appeared in Oprah and Every Morning Show. I'm so lucky to have you as a guest today. She has raised a family as a business owner and spawned 3 artistic and entrepreneurial kids. And her life is rounded out by also being a spouse, caretaker to an elder, interfaith minister, community leader, and Broadway enthusiast. So are we in for a treat today? Welcome, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you for that great intro.
Thank you for joining us. And I'm so excited to talk about what to do when your career doesn't align anymore with your shift in identity as a new mother, right? Or maybe it's not completely misaligned, but you're feeling something is off. So why is this important topic near and dear to your heart, Laura?
Well, it's near and dear to my heart because I've lived it, but also as a career coach, I've had dozens of clients who are planning what maternity leave is going to look like and what their job is going to be when they come back. And I respect that urge, but I also respectfully know that you have no idea who you're going to be on the other side of bringing children into your life. There's no way to predict the feelings, the way your priorities shift, and how your identity shifts. And for some people, they struggle with not wanting to go back to work. Others struggle with being a mother, just can't wait to get back to work and feel normal. So, it's really important to find that grounding piece that allows you to know who you are as the landscape is shifting in your home and work life.
Yes, absolutely. And so how is you and I were chatting backstage before we went live for our show here, but how is your approach very unique? I started talking to you about defining those values, that purpose and impact, and you chimed in talking about how looking at your life story leaves clues for you to uncover your life purpose. Can we explore that together?
Absolutely. And yes, this is where I jump off the conventional train. I don't even look at my clients' resumes. They always think that in letting me know who they are and should we possibly work together, I should give you my resume. And I say, please do not, because a resume only gives you the chronological business case for what your best next step would be based on what you've done in the past. But in your life story, what is there to be mined, like gold, is some common threads, things that you have naturally been attracted to your whole life, and not necessarily the obvious, like, oh, you love to travel. Oh, you should be a travel agent. No, I don't mean that. But, what does travel allow? Does it allow discovery? Does it allow awe? Does it allow creativity because you come up with your own itinerary? Does it allow you to bridge cultures? So you want to go deeper and really look at the things that you've been attracted to naturally, like what is the true significance of them? Because they very well may still have significance in your very corporate or non-corporate career. So we look for those themes. We look for drivers. Many of us reach success in our careers driven by something we were running away from versus something we were running to. So if any of you out there have ever said, I will not be like this parent or that parent, or I'll show that teacher who didn't believe in me, or I will never be poor, like you were driven to success, but that motivator may no longer fit you. And especially around having children. Like I had a client once who was a top saleswoman, and this is before I did the methodology that I'm telling you about, but she was a top salesperson losing her edge, wanted me to coach her to get her edge back. And in the discovery, we realized that, wait a minute, her motivation her whole life was that she would not be a teenage statistic because she had gotten pregnant at 17 gave up a basketball scholarship, never went to university. Eventually, had 2 children, went back to school, got married, etc. Not necessarily in that order. And her whole drive was, I won't be a teenage statistic. Well, here she is 35 and sweetie, you're not a teenager and you're not a statistic. Like, you did it. So that's why she lost her mojo. It wasn't that she didn't like sales anymore. It was that she didn't need to operate on that operating system like she was on a PC and now she needed to become a Mac. So that is a very unconscious thing that not everybody looks for. So it could be exactly in your identity shift as a parent. What brought you to this moment of success in your career, and does it still apply to you today, or will you have a different driver? So that's another place. And then looking at some of the significance of past dreams, again, not the obvious, like I was an actor. And it's not, I didn't make it as an actor, my old dream must come back. It's more of, why did I want to be an actor? And that was a hindsight exercise. But, the discovery was that I actually wanted to be on the stage to make people think and help them be inspired to change something in their life because of the experience they had in the theater. And, guess what? I found another career where I did that and I didn't have to, be a waitress at the same time anymore. So looking at the life story, looking at purpose more as like an essence about you. A purpose is not something you do. It's something you naturally are. And how do you encapsulate that into your next step? So, that was the quickie version, but it's going deeper into the layers and literally excavating what I call your life blueprint, because it's there. We just weren't given a manual.
Absolutely. And so if we can, I don't know if there's an echo on your end.
Uh-oh.
We'll have to, how are we doing? Let me see. I'll just, listeners, please. Excellent. Thank you. That's what I was just about to do. So when I'm thinking about the women who are listening in this community, I'll take a couple of case studies. A lot may be the only women in the room. Many are engineers. Perhaps their parents just said, you study to be an engineer and you're set. You'll have a career and a good paying job. Now that they're mothers and we're discussing the challenges of being in a very male-driven competitive environment where the schedule is not flexible anymore, it's easy to get lost and wonder, am I really cut out for this? And here I come in with my hidden but not hidden agenda. I believe that these women have a unique perspective to bring to the world as problem solvers, right? They have a unique message to bring and talents, understanding, especially when it comes to natural resources, right? Many of them are dealing with helping nourish the systems that provide energy, bring energy to our tables, bring water to our tables, like build roads and infrastructures, right? And sometimes there's this, you feel like the tiny cog in a wheel being connected to this big picture, and you feel lost in your identity. So how would what are some questions that these women can ask themselves when they look at the amazing transferable skills that they've developed, being in an environment that maybe is pushing them to just access certain parts of their identity, and questioning, am I called to do this? And what should I do next? And just being sleep deprived and under pressure, and their marriages are being tested. How would you bring things back into perspective or ground a person in this situation?
Well, you mentioned values, and it's always a place to revisit what you really care about, because it's likely changed. But also, it's about getting out of the box. Okay, so engineer, whatever field you're
Laura,
in.
I'm so sorry. On my end, there's a very garbled robotic sound. So let's try again. And if that comes back, we might invite you back into the studio. Can we try again?
How does that sound?
Perfect. Okay, we're back.
Okay, I'm going to repeat what I said. So, yes. That when we are in a certain field and in a certain industry, right? So it's a box. Like, we fit in this box. This is what we studied. This is my experience. But when you have the shifting landscape of your values changing and you want different things, or you may not want to put up with that level of pressure, or maybe whatever the work environment is, or even the purpose of the company you work for may not be aligned with you anymore. You have to get outside of the box, right? So like, for example, I just worked with someone in the energy world who was on the fossil fuel side and just could no longer sit with herself being on the fossil fuel side when she wants to work in green energy. But her resume does not reflect anything in that space. We just had to get out of the box and don't look at the resume. So what did she want? What did she care about? What, would she spend the rest of her days doing if she could? What is her greater vision for the planet? And she was able, through her current network, to be able to find her way. I think it took over a 6-month period between the discoveries and the networking to land her first job on the other side of energy, on the green side of energy. So it's those questions again of who am I? How do I want to contribute? What really matters to me? And get off of the resume page that tells you can't do anything else. This is what everyone's going to see. These are your credentials. You don't know anybody. You're not valuable. All those doubts that come up. And you just have to keep championing the other side. And it's through action. It's not through thinking about it. Because thinking about it, you'll stay stuck.
So for somebody then, I like that. That's a nice bridge to the next question. For somebody considering making a change in 2022, and they've done some of the reflection, they've been in their brain, they know their skills. What are 3 actions they can take in January, February, March to start making progress and the direction of a new career path? If that's what if they're looking for a new position, new company, maybe even something outside of their direct field of expertise when they have very specific training, what action should they take?
Okay, January action or immediate action over the holiday break. Figure out your criteria for happiness. What is going to be your new criteria for happiness, right? It could have a salary number on it, but let's not start there. Start with being all that you can be, contributing what you really want to contribute, using your skills, having a workplace that is respectful and creative. Like, put down your criteria for happiness. 2, then match that criteria to jobs and fields outside of what you think is possible. Like, just don't limit yourself to the things your resume can get you. Just think outside of the box. And then you start putting that into conversations, whether it's on LinkedIn and you start looking for people, you look for certain companies, you look at who you already know and have those conversations. And, I know sometimes people feel limited because they don't want to indicate that they're looking for a job, but, in the trusted circles that you have, I want to use my skills in this, and this. I want to be in let's say we'll go back to the green side of energy versus the fossil fuel side of energy. Who do you know? And you start taking your contacts and splitting them in 2 and so on and so on and so on. You never get off the phone without asking, is there anyone else I should be speaking to? Because that allows you to grow your network. So in a 3-month period, you'll have your criteria, you'll have an idea where it could belong, and you'll start networking your way to new possibilities. You may not even apply for a job yet, but you're looking to cross over. Like those of you who may have been trained as scientists, right? You look under the microscope and you see a cell and it has cilia. It has those little hairs, and that's how it moves along its way. Well, the people in your life are the cilia on your cell. They are the locomotion that will get you to where you want to go. And we cannot do it alone. So if you're still trying to think and, just research on your own behind the screen, that's not how it happens. We need to activate coincidences and luck. And they come when you tell the truth about what you really want, as scary as it is and impossible as it seems. And it doesn't matter that you don't see a path to get there. Those are the steps to take. And things start showing up. I promise.
So what happens then if somebody's making a really radical move, right? So if they're going from science to wanting to be a yoga teacher, and it's not the same type of job security, and they have to think outside of the box because they want, a really good salary, or they want to be established. How have you seen people navigate such radical shifts and perhaps breaking through expectations we had of our parents, right? So I know you have to often cut the umbilical cord, and you have to have courage to really stand for what you believe in. Do you have stories like that you can speak of, people who have made those changes?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing no matter how old you are, how powerful the parental expectation can be, especially if your parents invested in your education or invested in the direction that you went in. I worked with someone who oh my gosh, I had the thought in my head. And oh, she was in banking, following in her father's footsteps, very much invested the whole family in her staying on this path. And she really wanted to be a fashion designer. And, you know, she had the means to go to China and look at how manufacturing was done and to see how that, you know, get some education. But she couldn't afford to just, you know, say she was going to live 5 years on her savings and become a fashion designer. So she networked her way into a very famous fashion house in New York City on the financial side. And again, educating herself on the business and starting to take classes in design and drawing, etc. And start, you know, a slower burn, but she was moving her way into the new industry until she was ready to branch out on her own as a designer. So it has to be a strategic plan and a financial plan. You know, you used yoga teacher for an example. If you go out and be a yoga teacher for somebody else, you're going to take several financial steps back. But if you're someone who thinks like an entrepreneur and you're like, I'm going to put in my 200 hours of training to become a yoga instructor, which I can do while I'm employed. I could get some real hours teaching on the weekends, which I can do as someone who's employed. And then say, but I'm going to own my own studio and we're going to have, you know, not only classes, but we're going to have other ways to bring in streams of revenue. And you start building a little empire around yoga. Now you might be able to replace your former income. So it's having that guidance, having the right mentors, understanding you may need to invest some time and money to make that grow. But I know from experience that once you can see it, like the carrot dangling in front of you, once you know what it is that you're working towards, it makes it much easier to stay in that job or situation a little longer because you know what you're building towards.
Okay, that's great. Yes, I think it will apply. I'm thinking of all the people in my community thinking about their career changes right now. What happens when somebody's doing the work but it's taking longer and they might get a bit discouraged? So they've been networking for months and you know maybe it'll take them just a little bit longer. How do you encourage people to stay motivated and focused on the change they're actually seeking and not festering perhaps in unpleasant feelings of stuckness from, you know, what they're trying to change?
Yes, I wish we could all control the timing. It wouldn't be fabulous, but no, we are tested and tested and tested again. Now, being in a group like Kenya's where you have other people in similar situations, that is a great way to keep going, to, you know, be able to compare notes with other people in similar situations like mine, having a guide or a mentor. But also it's understanding that when you feel the most dejected, take a day, but that's all you get. Then go and take a very scary action after 24 hours. You know, take a bigger step instead of thinking, oh, it's not going my way. I don't even want to make one single phone call. Well, you know what? No, I'm going to call a big shot's office and see if I get through. So I find if you scare yourself, you grow yourself and you create new opportunities. And I use that advice on myself.
Absolutely. So Laura, those are some really good thoughts. Tell us more about your own journey. How did you end up doing what you're doing while raising a family? You know, and how do your artistic predispositions nourish your talents right now as you guide people?
Thank you for asking. Sure. I mean, my parents would not pay for me to be a theater major. That was my desire. So I was a communications major, which is, you know, you don't make much money as a communications major either. But at the end of my college career, I had less fear about moving to New York City and trying my dream to be on Broadway than I did about writing a resume and getting a job I could be stuck in for a decade. So I, you know, threw everything, all caution to the wind, lived at home. I lived close to New York City, so that wasn't a big stretch. And I waited on tables for years. And I had relative success as an actor. I mean, I was part of all the unions. I traveled with doing major shows around the country. I never made Broadway. I came close. But at my 30th birthday, before my 30th birthday, I had given myself 5 years out of school. I was already up to 8. And I was like, I can't. It was the lifestyle more than the acting itself that bothered me. And I really didn't know what to do. I had a very deep depression, feeling like I had failed, and yet I had worked so hard. But when I came out of that depression, I had an intuition that I encourage all of you to listen to your intuition. My intuition said, call your old acting mentor. His name was Jay. And I'm like, he's going to think I'm crazy. Like, how am I going to, whatever. I call him and I said, I'm thinking of leaving the business. I don't know what else I would do. And my intuition was so strong. It said, he has your next job or career for you. And I said, I don't know what I want to do. And he goes, well, I become a coach. Maybe I can help you figure it out. So I spent 2 years as a client. And I started teaching presentation skills in corporations, right? Easy as an actor to show people how to stand in front of the crowd. But one day I looked at him, I said, I go deeper with people than how you hold your hands and what you say in a speech. I'm getting at like the best in them. And I said, I want to do what you do. So I was one of the first 16 coaches in the United States to be trained. I was one of the same 16 people that started the International Coaching Federation, which is now all over the world, 80 countries, and the only, the biggest body that exists to put credentialing and some kind of policing and standards in place for this profession. And then I was very, very fortunate to be on the ground floor. And one thing led to another. It's a long story. It led to books, led to Oprah, led to being on, media tours, traveling the world, helping coaching get established in Britain and Ireland and Tokyo and all over the world. And my own business, I found a specialty out of my third book, which was helping people figure out what to do with their life. So that's the methodology that we've been talking about today. And I've enjoyed a 27-year career. With peaks and valleys, fame fades, but it definitely helped me build up a credibility and a speaking career. And my TEDx talk has 1.6 million views. I get emails from all over the world. So it's like an honor and a privilege to keep teaching other coaches how to succeed in this business and also keeping my own business alive. So all that to say, my parents did not want to support me doing this. My mother was like, oh, first you were an actor, now you can do this thing no one ever heard of. And to this day, I remind her that I made more money than my two parents combined over the course of their entire career. So it worked out, not without ups and downs. And the parenting thing, I started my business before I had children. I quickly found that I needed the stimulation of work. I wasn't a good full-time parent. And yet my husband and I always chose to work at home, even long before this pandemic. So we had a zero commute. So we had utmost time with our children. We had one help at home when they were young, then they went out to daycare. And now my kids are 21, and 24, and they're not out of the house yet. The oldest one is. So you just keep going through the iterations, and currently I hire my daughter constantly. I'm like, I have receipts for you to file. I have this for you to do, that for you to do. And then she wants me to also pay her to help around the house. I'm like, no, I will pay you to help in my business. The house is part of your citizenship of the house. So Absolutely. That's the story as quickly as I could get it out.
Well, there's so many follow-up questions I have based on that. So I'd love to explore those. When you're talking about the coaching industry, really interesting one. I've for quite a while in my community, I talked about peer coaching. So we'd pull some articles from Harvard Business Review, and I like to encourage people to develop their own peer coaching skills, right? Whatever profession you're in, coaching skills are invaluable. So what are in your role and everything you described, what are some tips and skills that any person who works with other humans who may have reports or might help other people achieve their full potential? What are some 3 key skills that good coaches have in terms of helping others get to the next level?
Well, the first thing is to participate in ego reduction therapy. I call coach training ego reduction therapy. It's not about your great ideas. It's not about all your experience. That's a mentorship. Coaching is actually learning to put, yes, you're going to have ideas for your clients, but your main skill set is questions. And when you ask someone a question that opens them up to the possibility and the action to take next, they have more ownership than if you told them what to do. And that's part of why it works. So it's a set of questions that are really important to learn which ones work, which ones don't. It's reducing your ego, and it's not about you and your answers and your wisdom and your experience. And finally, just knowing when to push and when to let someone have a break. It's like the accountability factor. And what is your style of accountability? Like I'm sometimes a velvet hammer. Like, I'm not mean, but I'm pretty direct. And that's not everybody's style, right? So you have to find what's your style and what works with the people you support. But in peer groups, learning how to inquire and be curious more than tell people what to do is a huge factor.
Absolutely. It makes me think my past is as a journalist, right? And so I ask tons of questions, and that's what our community is about, figuring out what is inside your soul, right? And obviously we share wisdom as mothers, sometimes just direct tips and tricks on how to get out of survival into thriving, but the questions are so important. Laura, when we work with moms in this community through workshops or through a programming, we talk about this 25-year question, right? We zoom out from the present and ask our women and the fathers too, what will your kids say about you in 25 years, right? How will they remember you being a working mom? And for a lot of people, it makes them weep to just think about their kids being this age. Your kids are in their 20s, right? And so as the new moms or moms of teenagers in this group think about what their experience will be like as parents, right? And what kids will remember them. Please give us some words of wisdom, right? Well, you can give questions if you want, but being in the situation of your kids being in their 20s, what nuggets would you like to share with our community about being a parent of children who are now adults and launching on their own?
Well, I I don't know if this is inspiring, but I just want all the parents to know that you're going to feel worse about your parenting than they will, probably. You think, oh, that time I said this, or this thing that I did that, so we always doubt ourselves. And I'm not there to the wisdom yet, but I also feel like as a parent, especially as a woman, that it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, if you work, they'll find a reason why that wasn't good for them. And if you don't work, then you weren't a good example of what's possible for them. So you can't win is what I'm saying. So just be you, be kind, have, your time with your family, invest in them. And, someone actually said to me the opposite. They said, your only goal as a parent is to raise people you'd like to have dinner with one day. And that takes the pressure off of some perfection of having them think of you a certain way, right? So, I think my kids have no idea how great I am. They will find out a long time from now, wow, she was pretty cool. And all I could think about was when she didn't let me use the car, so so I feel for any of you with teenagers, it's a horrible shift from these cute pink little things that really like you to hairy things that with pimples that aren't always so grateful and very demanding. So I feel for you. And then when they mature a little bit in their 20s, you get them back, they do start to see that, oh, maybe you did do something for me. And I don't know, this was a tough one for me. I had a psychic once tell me that this is my first lifetime as a parent, and I believe her. I am not a great parent. I'm good enough. And we'll see what they think in the end. We'll see.
It's very humbling to hear that, truly, right? I think I go through waves of thinking about how much control I have over my children's outcomes and exploring where do I really have agency? What's really in my command, right? In terms of modeling, and then they go out in the world. My oldest is going to kindergarten next year. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's just other influences, and he's already in childcare, but it's just a different level of influence on their brains. And it's a little bit nerve-wracking to observe that. So I'm hoping that I'm doing my best. And I like the idea of enjoying to have dinner at the table. I'm an only child. My husband is from a family of 5. And when I see him and his siblings, and I moved to this town and just saw like the ruckus of everybody, gathering, and now there are grandchildren. It's so nice, that chaos, right? The loveliness, the laughter.
It is chaos, but it can be so much fun. And
yeah.
And my kids have all gone through stages of like, need you, don't need you, so the hardest thing I think as they get older is you're always present, but a certain level of detachment, meaning that they'll like you one day and then the next day they're too busy with their own life,
Mm-hmm.
And I try to think, like, my mother's 85 years old, and I see her almost every day. So when she says, I never see you, I'm like, what are you talking about? But that's how you feel as an older parent, is like, you're always your babies. And how do you not need them and give them the space to be who they are? And one of the things that a mentor of mine said to me too about parenting was like, when your kid walks through the door, do you stop everything and go, they just take your breath away and you smile? And that's what I try to keep in my mind, of like, that's who they need me to be. This person who they can rely on as if there's just one person or two, because they have a dad, that the world stops for them, and yet in a way that's healthy and not indulgent and creating bratty children, right? So it's always a dance. It's always a fine line. You think you have the best of intentions and it gets taken the wrong way. So I'm in the be fully present and be fully detached from results stage. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Laura, I have two more questions for you. The first one will be relating to our discussion. The second will be, where can people find you? Are there any resources you would like to point them to? So up to you if you want me to ask it again. But the first question would be, based on our conversation, what we discussed live and even behind the scenes, and what's going on in the world right now, right? It's just as we're recording this for a live show, you'll hear, some people will hear this as a podcast episode, where we're facing possibly some additional lockdowns. We're not out of the woods yet. So are there any other messages that you would like to share with this community, with the zeitgeist of the day, that perhaps our discussion prompted?
We are in such a state that causes us to have to be flexible constantly. I mean, we think that change could not get any faster, and yet, tomorrow there's a new variant, and you may pull your kids out of school, and you may, be canceling everything. So I think modeling flexibility, modeling that we are resourceful and creative as a species, I think is a skill set that our kids are going to need. We don't, the weather events, all the things that we worry about don't have to be disastrous. We just need to be modeling that we can adapt and we can adjust, and we have to do our best, and we would like to avoid these things, but we just have to be creative, resourceful, and flexible. And human beings have always been that way. It's our culture and our society that makes it harder to be that way. So I find it interesting in a way. I feel like we're moving back in time. There was after the World War II, you get an education and you get a good job, and you're a slave to the corporate world. And, the Great Resignation going on right now. Also, so many people changing what they want out of work due to the pandemic and being home. We're looking at, I think in the United States, 41 million, was it 41 million or 4.4? Oh my gosh, I'll have to find the statistic. But a serious amount of businesses were started during 2020, 2021. So more and more, we see that our future is in our own control. And I think that is invaluable to be passing on to our kids, and not repeating the same patterns of, you've got to, the thing that kills me when we guide our children, we were given paper maps in high school and maybe in college. And today's young people, and even us adults, need a GPS. We need to be able to fine tune and find our North Star. And it's not on a piece of paper, and it's not what are you good at and what do you like. It's deeper than that. And it's so in our habits to tell our children they can be anything they want when they grow up, until they go to pick a college or a course of study. We say, well, how are you going to make a living at that? You can't do that. So let's watch that mixed message, everybody, because the world has changed. And we need to know, what is the nugget that our kid is trying to get at? When they want to be an astronaut, do they really want to go into space? Or is it the awe? Is it the wonder? Is it the science? Is it making the world a better place? So we need to ask the questions too.
Yeah.
And not just take everything.
Such a nice way to conclude, because I often talk about that. We were told we could have it all as women, but then the whole juggling of being a working mom, right? The two jobs, we don't really have a manual for that. And so I love how you're reframing those questions. So what a beautiful way to conclude. Laura, where can people find more of you?
I'm going to send you to 2 places. You can follow my name under there on the ticker tape, laurabermanfortgang.com, or go to nowwhatcoaching.com, where you'll find a lot of what we were talking about today and uncovering your purpose, etc. There's some free resources on, I think, both sites, if not one. And please enjoy them. And I thank you so much for having me as your guest. And moms, like a mother, we fight like lionesses. So fight for yourself too, as well as for your kids. And you mentioned the word soul, and that's what it's all about. We can't sell our soul to have whatever society expects of us. We need to be who we are, because a life that's working is the greatest contribution you can make to the world. So make your life work.
Beautiful. Okay, thank you so much, Laura. So I will see you backstage in just a second. For all our listeners and viewers, please, if you enjoyed this episode or the season, invite another mom, woman, or father, or anybody who has caregiving duties who needs to hear this message, right? Many of us are going to be experiencing career changes, and what we heard today applies to not only moms, but anybody who has a shift in their identity and needs to adjust and create a new future that's not so anchored in old autopilot habits. So thank you so much for your time and support, Laura. Thank you for your wisdom, and I will see you backstage.